Hey everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis, the April Fool's edition. Now, I wanted to think about something that could be good for April Fools, but I'm not really that type of prankish person, so I figured I do something that is still productive but a little offbeat from what I usually do. Now, I usually talk crap about how to draw anime tutorials, but admittedly, there are a lot of great ones on the internet nowadays, especially from Pixiv. Not to say everything I will be reviewing today will be from there, but either way, a lot of good stuff here. So let's look into some of these. What could be productive for you, even though they might be drawing a style that you might be not using. So here we have a head tutorial. So one thing to know about anime and drawing heads in that style is that they cheat a lot. And you might notice from here even that there are a lot of things that just don't feel like they work from in terms of a technical standpoint, but they work from an aesthetic standpoint. So notice how this is a typical frontal face anime head. So you see that the mouth to chin is around there, but you see it seems like there's a lot more down on here, and there's also more up here. So one thing to note is that if you were to draw an anime face in a really extreme angle, you do have to cheat because you just cannot translate whatever is on the frontal view for every angle and make it look good, right? That's why I've said before, anime likes to cheat a lot. This would be a prime example of it. This tutorial works for the sake of aesthetics, but it's probably not the best if you're trying to learn from a technical, getting it objectively truthful standpoint. So here, this one is more useful for all kinds of style, and it's the idea of rolling your clothing and other costuming around the form rather than having flat lines. Um, in a lot of cases, you want to exaggerate the lines too. So here, you can see I'm gonna turn it down a bit. The wrong side, notice that the X is over here. You do not want to have a situation where you are making your clothing do horizontal or vertical lines. The reason why is our legs are rounded. We think of it as cylinders in most cases. It doesn't always have to be cylinders. You most likely would have to mix certain other shapes, but for the sake of simplicity, we have to assume that the leg is a three-dimensional shape, and having a straight line through as pants would not read it as that. So you see on the correct side for this tutorial, you notice that the artist curves the pants. And of course, there's also a little bit of gesture here, making the butt bigger just so that it creates a nicer rhythm. It doesn't always have to be like this, but just letting you know. And there's also the curvature over here. Great tutorial. It makes sense for a lot of things, not just drawing legs. This hand tutorial is fantastic. I found this on Pinterest. So you see how this artist is breaking down the shapes of the hand to make it easier to visualize from a from a foreshortening standpoint. So you can see here, if I were to translate the colors here, it will be something like this, right? So it's sort of like dissecting the well, not the quadrants, the sections of the hands, and then just thinking it in terms of that sense in order to create easier visualizations in your head on how to draw extreme angles. Fantastic tutorial. And again, if there's any any tutorials that you like over here, just pause it, and maybe take a screenshot and just Google image it. There's so many that I want to go through here. So this one, of course, everyone's favorite subject matter, the breasts, the female breasts. In a lot of cases, you'll find these a lot on the internet on how to draw these, especially with the anime style. This particular one actually makes a lot of sense because it pertains into weight. And weight is something that a lot of people kind of overthink, but it's actually very logical, as you can see. So the first one you see is a very droopy female breast. So you see that the gravity. One thing I like to do is to just think of the breasts as weights that are being pulled down by gravity. If you can really think about that logically, it's not that hard to believe. So if you have a very loose bra, or maybe the woman is naked, then the breast would have nothing to hold it up against. So you end up with the gravity holding it down until the skin over here is pushed to its limit. So you end up with this sort of oval shape. Now, once you have a tighter bra here, you see that now if you were to think of it as think of these breasts as something that can be maneuvered. Really weird wording. If the bra is naturally pushing towards then you would have the excess breast meat over here pushing outwards. So you get that, and of course you get even more extreme, something like this, and then this would be crazy extreme. This is very anime. Unlikely most artists would be drawing situations using this, but in the end, this is still a fantastic tutorial when it comes to really thinking in terms of flesh and meat. As weird as it sounds. Speaking of which, here's another one that's really good. So a lot of people, when they draw female breasts, are not thinking about the underlying structure of the rib cage and such. So you end up with drawing two spheres on a really flimsy body. But in this case, this artist is really reiterating the point that you do need to think about the rib cage underneath. So you see how the bottom left examples, the breasts are actually situated on top of the rib cage, which makes it a lot easier to visualize. Even though you see, look at how big the breasts are, but because the artist is still putting it on a framework, it would work because it is given a foundation. Now, of course, these proportions are kind of extreme. You don't really have to use these extreme examples, like how small the head is. But again, fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with this particular case where this artist is essentially just building Legos on top of each other to make sure that the structure is proper throughout. Even, again, if the proportions are a little bit different from what you might usually do. Now, I don't want to keep reviewing this type of subject matter, but this one was really good, and it's not even a tutorial about it, even though it might use that as a subject matter. So what this is sort of like encompassing your kind of creating districts of a subject matter in order to make it easier to draw from a more foreshortened standpoint. So in this particular case, the artist is, let's use colored mode. So this artist is encompassing the torso breast area in one circle, and then really driving home the point that no matter which angle you're putting in, the proportions between the circle and the actual drawing area will be the same. So what I mean by this is, let's say I don't know Japanese, maybe it might have reiterated the point better. But let's say I want to draw the body, and then I really want to deal with the the hip area as well. So if I were to put the blue circle as the hip area, then you notice that even though I am sort of foreshortening the perspective here, the relationship should be relatively the same, but in perspective. Kind of hard to conceive when you are starting out, but once you understand this sort of fundamental, then it makes it a lot easier to really get your idea or visualizing different angles properly. Now, I don't know if this is the exact reason this tutorial was made, but it is what I got out of it, so hopefully that makes sense. So here as well, this is actually not a tutorial on breasts, but though, the Pixiv tutorials tend to have women as subject matter a lot of times. This one is about gesture, and you notice on these ends, the artist is Xing the bad examples of a stiff pose. This is something that a lot of people starting out would make the mistake of. They kind of make the poses a bit too vertical, they're not giving dynamicism to it. So you see how the good examples, very dynamic. You see the curvature of the body here. So it's sort of like as you were to, if you were to draw these, your hand will kind of just flow along really nicely. So you, again, a lot of dynamicism, pushing towards the idea that you shouldn't be too vertical. Just push the boundaries of the body and really don't play it safe when it comes to that, especially with these really weird dance poses on the top left area. So I want to finish off with not really anime, but this one kind of surprised me because it is a really nice exercise that you can do to get a garbage bag or even just any bag. I believe in my art college, Sheridan College, the illustration program over there have a first year assignment where they have to draw a bag and render it in realistic terms. So in this case, you see how the artist is breaking down the cut of the shadows and lights, and then really breaking it down into values as well. This is not as easy as people think, by the way. If I were to do this as well, I would probably have trouble nowadays because of just how many different things you have to really study and observe properly before you can get the bag. And then you have to think about not only the small, detailed, sort of district cuts of the lights and shadows, you also have to deal with the grand picture. So you see how this example on the number 2 here, that if I were to break it down in a really simple term, there is actually a nice lighting from the top left area that creates an implied sense of lighting here. So even though there's a lot of things going on, you do see that there is a nice cut of light and shadow, which is the mastery of the micro and the macro vision of the garbage bag. Now, once the artist established that, then we can start playing around with the really fancy, shiny plastic type of rendering, which will break a few rules when it comes to the sphere I drew before. But because it's a plastic bag, it reads properly. So as the artist renders here, everything else becomes very rudimentary because once the foundations are created, then you don't really need to think about anything else. Everything kind of lays into order, and then you get the nice garbage bag at the end. Again, a fantastic exercise. I was surprised to find this on Pinterest, but something you can do as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this April Fool's edition. I wanted to make it educational anyways, but kind of just breaking down a few things, a few really good tutorials that I found online, especially since I do understand that a lot of people kind of stumble upon these, and you do want to really be open-minded about it. Even though I say don't look into how to draw anime tutorials, some of these are really fundamentally strong, and they kind of say a lot of things that even sometimes art schools don't really go into. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.